Matthew Kenney, I should say Chef Matthew Kenney. If anyone could speak from both sides of the fence, you could speak from both sides, because you're a mainstream chef and a vegan chef. And not only just vegan, but raw. How in the world did that shift come about?
It was a long time coming. Growing up in Maine, I was very centered my diet around fruits and vegetables and seasonality, and I was very much into health. So it was a little bit of a detour for me to become a chef in the first place. My interest was in health and fitness, and at the same time I wanted to understand gourmet cuisine. So it wasn't until about 12 years later that I tied my two passions together, making food beautiful and aesthetically pleasing and delicious, but also food that's healthful. And it was just a very, very long process of realizing what made me feel good and what I thought would help others as well. So one day a light bulb moment happened, and I was introduced to raw cuisine, and I thought, wow, if somebody can make this food appealing to the mainstream, it will really be impactful in a positive way.
And I like to tell the story that you had told me once about your energy level once you became plant-based.
Well, I was just about 40 years old and starting to slow down. My body had gotten a little tired, some aches and pains from running, and I just attributed it to the aging process. And at the same time, when I discovered raw food and I went all raw, within 6 months these aches and pains were gone. My energy levels were higher, I needed less sleep, and I've just been, for the last 10 years, been living the way I felt when I was in my 20s. So it's really hard for people to believe, but I hear it every day from people from around the world, how it's changed their lives.
When you first went, did you go directly raw from being a meat eater, or did you have cooked raw food? Cooked food in the beginning. I
pretty much went raw overnight. I lived a Mediterranean diet, but it wasn't at all vegetarian, and within a week of being introduced to raw food, I was 100% raw, and I stayed 100% raw for 2 years. So it was a very, very rapid change, and it was great. I felt better every single day. There were moments where you go through detox and your body's adjusting, but for the most part it was just instant gratification.
Do you recall what foods you started to eat raw first? Because a lot of people are very intimidated by raw. They think, oh, I must have a dehydrator, I have to do special preparation that I've not done before.
The foods that I tried to eat when I first went raw influenced the work that I do today, because I thought, okay, I can make this gourmet raw dish without any training just because I'm a chef. My first attempts at raw food were really quite pathetic and inedible, and I realized, okay, you have to keep it simple. Focus on whole fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, and keep it really clean and really simple, and over time learn the techniques that allow you to incorporate a gourmet aspect into raw food. So I experimented a lot, way too much, and way more than I recommend. I tried everything, but eventually, after a couple of months, I realized focus on the greens, green juices, smoothies, salads, really good fats like avocados and nuts and oils and so forth. And once I got the clean part down, then I started experimenting with the gourmet again.
Well, you also have become quite the cookbook author with raw. You began with Pure Food and Wine. Raw Food, Real World. I'll get it. Raw Food, Real World cookbook, right?
Pure Food and Wine was the result of about a year of experimentation and research with my partner at the time, and we opened that restaurant, and it did really well and still does today, and we did a book which reflected our philosophy of that journey, becoming raw and opening this restaurant, and it was very successful. And since then I've written, I think, 5 or 6 more raw food books. My next one's coming out in February on raw chocolate.
Did you mention the titles of some of them? And Gibbs Smith is the publisher. We share the same publisher.
Gibbs Smith has been my wonderful publisher for several years now, and it's really been a great partnership because their books are so beautiful and aesthetically produced, and they have allowed me a lot of freedom to experiment with different concepts. So the first one was Everyday Raw, which was trying to make raw food accessible to the mainstream. And after that, we followed it with Entertaining in the Raw, which was a very, very artistic approach to raw food. And then Everyday Raw Desserts, Everyday Raw Express, which is a simplified version of Everyday Raw, and it's been really well received by people who want to prepare this food with no dehydration, no coconuts, everything in 20 minutes or less. And it's a really successful book, and the raw chocolate will be coming out in February for Valentine's Day.
What has been the result? I mean, have they encouraged lots more people to feel they can actually be raw? What are some of the stories you've heard?
I mean, it's really quite gratifying, and it gives me sort of the inspiration to keep writing, because I get letters from people all over the world daily. You know, this morning I had some letters from Japan and some from Slovenia, and it's literally the entire world has contacted me to say, you know, how much they've enjoyed the books, or they have a question, and it's become a global movement. People are changing their diets and their health with raw food and other kinds of diets as well. But raw food is one that is very clear, a clear path to health, and so the feedback from the books is phenomenal, partly because they have such beautiful photography.
Now, who's a photographer?
The last 3 or 4 books, the photographer is Adrian Mueller. He's based here in New York, and really, really wonderful. I mean, I think, you know, raw food is such an art that it deserves that platform of, you know, where it gets a lot of attention, as you know in your book. Which
well,
is
being a
beautiful.
food photographer, I always want to give food photographers credit. What in the last book, the Everyday Express, what have you found to be one of the most popular recipes in the book?
People like things that really just involve knife skills and not a lot of machinery. So, for example, we have an avocado carpaccio, I think with red chili, and we have an avocado and baby zucchini tartare with citrus, and it's just very clean and simple, and as long as you have good fresh produce and nice knives and cutting board, you're all set. So those kind of dishes are really what people, they're so simple, people think, wow, why didn't I think of that? Those are the kind of dishes that really go over well because anybody can make them.
I see that more and more raw products are even available in stores. Have you thought of doing any products? I know that's a hard thing to do.
I am working with my partner on a raw chocolate business, a brand, but I don't really intend to get too much into products. I think people out there are doing some amazing things, and I spend so much of my time on the education side of it with my school in Oklahoma, and so I don't really focus too much on the products, but I love that they're out there.
Could you tell me very quickly how you make the chocolate macaroons?
Sure. Well, there are several ways, but the best way, my favorite way, which is not necessarily in the books, is to use some raw almond flour, a sweetener like raw agave or coconut nectar, cacao powder, which is the raw cocoa powder, dehydrated dried coconut, a little bit of vanilla bean, and a pinch of salt. And really it's just sort of, you know, compressed together and formed into macaroons, and they're really good if they're dehydrated for a few hours. You could eat them undehydrated, they still taste great, but a little bit wet.
And now, if for something like that, could someone actually use an oven at the lowest, like warm setting, or is that still too hot?
They still get pretty hot.
Yeah.
You can open the door, and you know, it might be some ovens will keep, the electric ovens will keep it at a really low temperature, and I've done that before. You can put them out in the sun.
Oh, there's another idea. Oh, that's fabulous. Tell me a little bit more about the Matthew Kenney Academy in Oklahoma. How long has it been in operation, and what do people come away with once they go there?
Well, we're 2 years old. We're the only state licensed, which is the main step toward federal accreditation. We're the only state licensed culinary school specializing in raw and vegan cooking in the country and in the world probably, which means we had to go through a very thorough process of establishing our curriculum and our sort of format. We have 2 4-week programs. One is advanced raw techniques, and the other is fundamentals of raw cuisine. We've graduated maybe 300 students from 30 countries, and we've grown from a little school in Oklahoma with 1 or 2 students to a school with, you know, full classes, and we're doubling our courses next year and adding a professional course and also a nutrition-based raw food course. And the academy is also expanding to other locations in the next couple of years.
Yes, because Oklahoma is not necessarily in the heart of everybody's path. You know, you really have to have it as a destination to go there.
It is a destination. Most of our students are international these days. 60 or 70% are coming from everywhere, from Italy to South Africa, Germany, I mean, you name it. Our students are from all over the world. But we are looking at our next location being in West Palm Beach and possibly Thailand.
And even raw. What do you have for breakfast?
Well, today I had a green juice. It's called The Meal, and it was from this new chain of juice bars called Juice Press. And I think it was apple, green juice, kale, apple, maybe a little spinach, lemon, I think. It was just strictly green juice. And And usually that or a smoothie. I'll have a green smoothie with spirulina or some kind of sea vegetable product in it. Sometimes apple with almond butter, but pretty simple.
Most people think that you have to have a very expensive green juicer to have a green drink. Is that really the truth?
For me, when I'm traveling or if I'm in New York or somewhere where there's a really good juice bar, I order green juice. But if I'm at home, I'll just blend the whole juice. I'll use like blueberries with spinach or blueberries and kale and make a green smoothie, which requires no juicer at all.
You can use just a regular blender for
Yeah,
that.
it's a different concept.
And the blueberry gives enough liquid?
Well, blueberry, sometimes a little bit of water or coconut water. I might use a little coconut water if I have it, or coconut ice cubes, a touch of raw honey.
Because that's a question I get a lot is, well, I only have a blender, and when I put it in, it gets too thick, and they don't know what liquid to put in.
Right.
And so it's wonderful that sometimes I put raw pressed apple cider if it's fresh from the farmer's market.
Yeah, apple cider is great. That Concord grape juice that they sell in the fall at the farmer's market is amazing for a smoothie.
And it could be white or red, I guess.
Yeah, and it's incredible. They sell it here in New York at the Green Market on, I don't know exactly the season, but it makes an incredible smoothie.
Yeah. What is your hope for the future in relation to not only your work, but perhaps people going plant-based?
Well, both for my work and my vision in general, I really want to see the food paradigm shift completely. I feel like much of the culinary world and much of the consumer world is really off track when it comes to the foods they should be eating that are best for their health, best for the environment, best on so many levels. And I think that along the way, people have lost their sort of sense of taste and are really thinking things are good when they're not really good. I mean, food should be good for us. If it's not good for us, to me it doesn't taste good. So I'd like to see a cultural shift, both at the restaurant level, at the institutional level, whether it be hospitals or schools or corporations, packaged food products. I'd like to see a major shift in my lifetime, and that's one of the reasons I have a school, because if I can educate hundreds of people a year who go out and make this food accessible and beautiful for other people, it's exponential. So I do expect a shift, but there's going to be a lot of resistance.
Matthew, thank you so much. You've been such a dear friend to me when you wouldn't have had to, and in my one of the first people to say yes when I started to do my first book, and I'm so happy to have you in this one. You're just a blessing to this movement, if I can call it a movement.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.